Russian researchers drilled into subglacial lake, sealed since before modern humans existed. And what came back alive shouldn't be possible. Russian scientists, drilling through nearly 13,000 feet of Antarctic ice, finally broke through to Lake Vostok in February 2012. And 12 days later, they extracted water samples from a lake that had been sealed beneath the ice for at least 15 million years. The samples arrived at laboratories in Russia and Europe. Microbiologists prepared their analysis equipment. The first genetic sequencing results came back, and what appeared in those results made Dr. Sergei Bulat go completely silent. Something was alive in the water. Multiple species, thousands of distinct organisms, bacteria moving through the samples, ancient microbes that shouldn't exist. The team ran additional tests, and the entire scientific community saw something that wasn't supposed to be possible. Life. Everywhere. Thriving. Share this with everyone you know, because Lake Vostok sits beneath Russia's Vostok Station in East Antarctica, one of the largest subglacial lakes on Earth, at 160 miles long and 30 miles wide, containing 1,300 cubic miles of liquid water that had been locked away from sunlight, from atmospheric oxygen, from everything that sustains ecosystems, for possibly 15 million years. And what was living down there in that frozen darkness breaks every rule about how life actually survives. Unknown bacteria species numbering in the thousands, organisms with DNA that doesn't match anything in global genetic databases, microbes that evolved in complete isolation while the entire history of human civilization unfolded on the surface above. All of it flourishing in conditions textbooks said were biologically impossible. Before we break down exactly what species the samples contained, how they survived without sunlight for millions of years, why scientists now believe these organisms could contaminate Earth's biosphere, and what this discovery reveals about the limits of biological adaptation, make sure you subscribe to Vault of Discovery. We're giving you the real science that rewrites what we thought we knew. The numbers are staggering. The ice above Lake Vostok is 12,139 feet thick, nearly 2.5 miles of compacted glacial ice. The Russian Antarctic expedition began drilling at Vostok Station in 1989, using thermal drilling techniques, where a heated drill bit melts through ancient ice layer by layer. It took 23 years to reach the lake. Satellite measurements confirmed the massive body of liquid water existed beneath the ice. The cylindrical borehole descended year after year through ice that preserves a climate record going back 420,000 years. And beneath all that ice, possibly sealed since before the age of dinosaurs, lay a lake that had never been accessible to humans. Think about what this actually means. That lake had been sealed beneath ice thicker than 10 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. No sunlight penetrating the darkness. No photosynthesis possible. Surface nutrients completely blocked by miles of solid ice. Temperatures hovering at -3 degrees Celsius. Liquid only because of the immense pressure from the ice above. Dissolved oxygen levels near zero. Everything microbiology understood about bacterial survival said life here should be minimal at best. Sparse organisms barely clinging to existence in a dormant state. But here's where extreme caution changed everything. The Russian team knew breaking through into the lake too quickly could contaminate the pristine ecosystem with surface microbes, drilling fluid, or kerosene used to keep the borehole from freezing shut. International scientists watching the project demanded strict protocols to prevent biological contamination of what could be Earth's most isolated ecosystem. Then the breakthrough arrived on February 5, 2012. The drill bit penetrated the final meters of ice. Lake water rushed up into the borehole. Then it froze solid in the sub-zero temperatures of the ice column above it. The team waited. Then they extracted ice core samples containing actual lake water frozen in place, samples that held whatever had been living in Lake Vostok's dark waters for millions of years. What nobody anticipated was what those samples contained. The cores were transported to the Petersburg Nuclear Physics Institute in Russia. International collaborators received portions for independent analysis. They began examining the ice under microscopes. running genetic sequencing on any DNA present in the samples. The first results came back. Scientists leaned closer to their computer screens. Then someone called an emergency meeting. The samples weren't sterile. They weren't empty. They were packed with life. Bacterial DNA, not just one or two species surviving in stasis, but genetic signatures from at least 3,507 unique organisms, according to a study published in PLOS One. Most were bacteria, but when researchers compared the DNA sequences to global genetic databases containing every cataloged species on Earth, nearly 95% didn't match anything science had ever seen before. Unknown life, unclassified, isolated from Earth's biosphere for 15 million years, while evolution continued in completely separate directions above and below the ice. Then came the revelation that shattered assumptions about extremophile survival. These organisms weren't dormant. DNA analysis showed they were metabolically active, alive, reproducing, consuming whatever chemical nutrients existed in the lake, building entire ecosystems in permanent darkness. But the larger mystery proved even more shocking. Some of the bacterial DNA showed adaptations that shouldn't be possible without evolutionary pressure from extreme conditions that don't exist in Lake Vostok. Heat-resistant genes in an environment that never exceeds freezing. Radiation-resistant DNA repair mechanisms in a lake shielded by miles of ice. These organisms have capabilities we don't understand. Dr. Sergei Bulat from the Petersburg Nuclear Physics Institute told Nature News in a 2013 interview after the genetic analysis was published. They survived conditions that should have killed them. They evolved in isolation from the rest of Earth's biosphere. And now, we've potentially released them into the modern world. Think about what this means. The drill punched a hole from the surface world directly into a sealed ecosystem that had been evolving separately for 15 million years. Lake water rushed up the borehole when pressure was released. Some of that water, and whatever microbes it contained, mixed with the drilling equipment, the ice around the borehole, the atmosphere inside Vostok Station. Quarantine protocols were implemented immediately, but the damage was already done. Here's the first shocking twist. Some of the Lake Vostok bacteria showed genetic resistance to antibiotics that didn't exist 15 million years ago. Resistance to modern pharmaceutical compounds they should never have encountered. Either the DNA sequences researchers were seeing represented contamination from surface microbes that got into the samples, which would mean the entire discovery was compromised, or Lake Vostok bacteria independently evolved the exact same antibiotic resistance genes that surface bacteria developed in response to human medicine. Both possibilities were terrifying for different reasons. Independent analysis by research teams in France, the United States, and the United Kingdom examined different portions of the samples using different techniques. They all found the same massive bacterial diversity. They all detected unknown species. They all confirmed metabolic activity. The odds that thousands of unique bacterial species all represented contamination from a single drill bit were essentially zero. Then came the second devastating revelation about what these organisms were actually eating. Lake Vostok has no sunlight, no photosynthesis, no food chain starting with plants or algae converting solar energy into biological fuel. The lake sits in eternal darkness beneath miles of ice. So how were thousands of bacterial species surviving? Chemical analysis of the lake water revealed the answer, and it was more unsettling than anyone expected. The bacteria were feeding on minerals, on rock, on the chemical energy released when water interacts with the bedrock beneath the lake, through a process called chemosynthesis. Studies showed Lake Vostok's water contains dissolved minerals from the ancient bedrock below. The lake sits in a rift valley, a place where Earth's crust is being pulled apart by tectonic forces. Heat from the planet's interior warms the bedrock. Chemical reactions occur where hot rock meets cold water. Those reactions release hydrogen, methane, and other compounds that bacteria can metabolize for energy. This is the same process that sustains life around hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean. But Lake Vostok's ecosystem is sealed, cut off, isolated beneath ice for millions of years, while similar ecosystems on the seafloor remained connected to the broader ocean. Think about the evolutionary implications. Antarctica has been frozen for at least 35 million years. Lake Vostok has been sealed beneath ice for at minimum 15 million years, possibly longer. The bacteria living there have been cut off, not just from surface ecosystems, but from every other life form on Earth, for a span of time longer than most mammal species have existed. The third twist changes everything about what this discovery means for understanding life's limits. Because the existence of this ecosystem beneath miles of Antarctic ice proves something that astrobiology has been hypothesizing for decades, but could never confirm. Life doesn't need sunlight to thrive. It needs energy. And if that energy comes from chemical reactions between water and rock, from geological heat escaping through planetary crust, from compounds dissolved in ancient sealed lakes, then photosynthesis becomes optional, rather than necessary for complex ecosystems. Lake Vostok is an analog for extraterrestrial environments, explained Dr. John Priscu, a biologist from Montana State University who has studied Antarctic subglacial lakes for decades in an interview with Live Science. If life can thrive beneath miles of ice on Earth, feeding on nothing but chemistry and geology, then the same process could be happening on Europa, Enceladus, or any ice-covered world with a liquid ocean beneath the surface. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, completely covered by ice potentially 15 to 25 kilometers thick. Beneath that ice lies a global ocean kept liquid by tidal heating from Jupiter's gravity. For years, scientists have speculated that life might exist in Europa's ocean. But the skepticism always centered on one question. How could life survive without sunlight in an ocean sealed beneath kilometers of ice for billions of years? The answer just came back from Lake Vostok's genetic analysis. If bacteria can thrive beneath 3,700 meters of Antarctic ice for 15 million years, fed by nothing but chemical energy from rock-water interactions in permanent darkness, then Europa's ice-covered ocean becomes not just theoretically habitable, but genuinely plausible as a refuge for extraterrestrial life. Think about how this reframes the search for life beyond Earth. Every model, every assumption about where life can exist just expanded. Ice-covered moons throughout the solar system, Europa, Enceladus, Ganymede, suddenly become not just interesting targets for exploration, but potentially active biospheres that have been flourishing in darkness for billions of years. But what the research team discovered next proves the Lake Vostok ecosystem faces an existential threat now that its sealed environment has been breached. For 15 million years, these bacteria lived in stable conditions: constant temperature, constant darkness, constant chemical composition, no exposure to oxygen, no exposure to surface microbes. Now the drill has punched a permanent hole from the surface to the lake. Oxygen is diffusing down the borehole. Surface bacteria are being introduced. We don't know how these organisms will respond to contamination, Dr. Boulat warned in interviews following the discovery. They've never encountered modern surface bacteria. They have no evolutionary defenses against organisms that evolved in completely different environments. We may have just killed the oldest continuously isolated ecosystem on Earth by exposing it to the outside world. Or worse, Lake Vostok's ancient bacteria might be the threat. If organisms that evolved in isolation for 15 million years are released into surface environments, they could behave in completely unpredictable ways. They might carry genes for toxin production. They might be resistant to every natural antibiotic that surface organisms use to compete with each other. Consider how many other subglacial lakes exist beneath Antarctica's ice sheet. Satellite surveys have identified at least 400 subglacial lakes scattered across the continent. Some are small, just a few kilometers across. Others are massive, rivaling Lake Vostok in size. All of them are sealed beneath ice. All of them are isolated from the surface world. And if Lake Vostok is any indication, all of them contain living ecosystems that have been evolving separately from the rest of Earth's biosphere for millions of years. One thing is absolutely certain. Russian scientists punched through to Lake Vostok on February 5, 2012, and discovered a thriving bacterial ecosystem sealed beneath 12,139 feet of ice for at least 15 million years. Genetic analysis revealed at least 3,507 unique organisms, with 95% showing no match to any known species on Earth. The discovery proves life can survive without sunlight, using only chemical energy from rock-water interactions, and makes Europa's ice-covered ocean a plausible habitat for extraterrestrial life. The drill created a permanent connection between Lake Vostok and the surface world, potentially contaminating the oldest isolated ecosystem on Earth with modern bacteria. At least 400 other subglacial lakes exist beneath Antarctic ice, each one potentially harboring millions of years of separate evolution. And as Antarctica's ice continues thinning, the question scientists are racing to answer is simple, but profound. What else is waking up down there that we're not prepared to handle? Stay tuned.